Hello, and welcome back to Friday Vinyl Club, where every day feels like a Friday and every album tells a story. I'm Jamie, and each episode I invite a guest to bring along one special record, an album that didn't just play in their life, but shaped it. This isn't about chart positions or critical reviews, it's about personal soundtracks, the records that stay with us long after the needle lifts. This episode, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Iona Luke. Iona is an incredible singer-songwriter whose music captures a kind of raw, vulnerable storytelling that stops you completely in your tracks. She has this rare gift for taking quiet, deeply personal moments and building these into sweeping universal anthems. And for this episode of Friday Vinyl Club, Iona has chosen Horses by Patti Smith. It's an album that didn't just redefine punk rock, it completely tore up the rulebook on how poetry and music could coexist. But before we dive into the album and why this record matters to Iona, let's rewind a little. Iona, welcome to Friday Vinyl Club. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm really good, and I'm really glad to have you here. Happy release day. This is your new EP, From Dust, has dropped today. How do you feel about that?
It's unbelievably exciting. I mean, it's the biggest project that I've done so far in my career, so it's pretty big, pretty scary, but yeah, super exciting. And everyone's already being lovely about it. So,
oh, fantastic! I look forward to digging into some of those tracks later in the podcast. You first came onto my landscape late last year when I saw you supporting one of my favourite bands, Amitri, in both Edinburgh and Glasgow. Two wonderful sets, and I've been keeping a close eye on you ever since. How did that opportunity arrive for you?
So my manager is actually also Amitri's manager. And I was listening to some of their music earlier last year, and I was just talking to him about how much I loved it. And they were kind of struggling to find someone to open because they just weren't totally sure what vibe they wanted to go for. And I was like, if you will have me, I would absolutely love just me and my guitarist, Ned, to go and play both nights and for it to be really song forward. Nothing kind of big and showy, no full band, just really songwriter focused and just about the lyrics and the melodies. And that's what we did. And it was unbelievable. I mean, playing Usher Hall and Barrowlands 2 days in a row right before Christmas was just a ridiculous experience. It was just amazing.
And connected you to a whole new audience as well. So up until that point, I hadn't heard of you or your music. And also a friend of mine and a regular listener to the pod, Melissa, she won't mind me saying, we both listened to you and chatted about you on the way back from Glasgow. She lives down in Wales, I'm here in Leeds, and we were talking about you on the train back, and she really connected with the song 17, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But since then, she's also become a huge fan of yours as well. So you managed to connect to a different audience, but hopefully that's the universal magic of music and songwriting, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, I was a little bit worried about it just because, it's just generationally quite different. And, music changes so much with time that sometimes it's quite difficult as like a young girl artist to kind of cross boundaries like that, if that makes sense. And so this is an incredible thing that's happened because I really wasn't expecting anything from it. I just wanted to play those amazing venues. So, I mean, honestly, to hear that it actually, made an impact and people really connected with it is unbelievably nice.
I think that's testament to your songwriting and the way you deliver as well, your stage presence. So, kudos for you from that perspective, Iona.
Thank you.
And Iona, on this podcast, we love to start at the very beginning and dig into your early music memories. What did the music actually sound like in the house when you were growing up?
So music in the house was, my dad loved kind of Bob Dylan, he loved Jim Morrison. It was all kind of that happening. And my mum was obsessed with Portishead. Actually, my parents' first dance song was Wandering Star from the Dummy album of Portishead, which actually I almost made the album that I was going to talk about today. But I figured that's kind of, it's my parents. I'll make my own way. Yeah. So honestly, like my mum was kind of punky and my dad was like a rock and roll guy, but always about songwriting and always about the lyric and the power of the lyric. And then, car journeys around. Then we got into like a lot of 90s band music, like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Smashing Pumpkins. That was really what we were listening to. Plus, as a young girl, obviously there's the whole Beyonce, Rihanna, Gaga, big female vocals. So I don't know. I actually feel like my music is quite representative of those things because it really is a mix of band music and me having grown up singing, learning singing from big female vocals. I mean, some of my songs have a kind of quietness and gentleness to them, but I'm a big fan of a big belt, I think.
Yeah.
That's kind of all representative of where musically I came from.
And you've certainly got exposure to some classics in there, certainly with your dad listening to The Doors and Dylan and things like that. Were you primarily listening CDs and streaming, or did your parents have vinyl in the house?
We're a vinyl family. My parents have a room dedicated to vinyl, which sounds ridiculous. It's like it's the living room and it's basically every single cupboard and every single shelf is full of vinyl. When I had a year off, I was just bartending and doing music, and I had like a spare weekend, and I spent the entire weekend alphabetizing the whole thing, and it's like 200 records. Actually crazy. But yeah, big vinyl family. We have loads of CD, but unfortunately, the CDs. This might be a controversial statement, but vinyl just does sound better. So yeah, big vinyl family.
I would totally agree with that. And if you ever get a spare afternoon and you want to come and alphabetize my vinyl collection, you'd be more than welcome. I certainly can't get my boy Ollie to do that, that's for sure. But I kind of have good intentions, and then when I take the vinyls out, I never put them back in the same place. I have to be said, I'm pretty bad from that. Just from that, then, do you remember the first vinyl record that you bought with your own money rather than listening to your parents?
It's Norman fucking Rockwell, the Lana Del Rey album. I think it's her best one. Every time I say that, someone argues with me, but I think it's pretty unbelievable. I'm a big Lana Del Rey fan, and I bought that album, and I was so excited. And I just remember thinking when I bought it, I was like, "There's no way she's going to write anything better." And she has. She's written some amazing songs, but that is the first one that I bought. Yeah, and that was just before my weird interaction with her as well. So that was really funny. I feel like I manifested it. But yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah, I've got a question about that coming up. So we'll touch back on Lana Del Rey and your experience there. Were you sharing music with your friends at school? Did you all have kind of different tastes or same tastes? When I was at school, it was talking about music and influencing people to listen to things. Were you doing any of that with your friends and schoolmates?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I mean, to be honest, first and foremost, like I find music a really personal thing. So totally counterintuitively, I actually am not the biggest music chatter. And I'm also, I like hate being on the aux or anything like that. I just kind of feel like, I don't know, I never want to like give my opinion on it for some reason. I'm like, people just do your own thing and I'm going to do mine and that's fine. But yeah, me and my friends did definitely talk about it. I mean, I've got, vast array of friends that are like rock and roll girls and pop music girls. It's kind of a huge difference. I've got some other musician friends, like one of my friends is an opera singer and one of them just loves going to gigs. And we always talk about what it is that actually makes good music, and a good song. So quite frequently we'll talk about just a well-written pop song, just a really good pop song. We were talking about Tate McRae doing that recently, and that some bands would be more mainstream if they just stopped trying to be kind of alternative and just something different and just wrote a banger. We were talking about that. And that's why Oasis actually was always something that we used to talk about, because I am, again, I'm going to get hate for this, but I'm really not an Oasis fan. But a lot of my friends were. It was kind of like always singing all the lyrics to Oasis, and I used to hate it. And they'd be like, "They are good songs though." And I'd have to be like, "Yeah, they are good songs, just not for me."
One of the great things that happened in our household, my son Ollie got to about 13, 14, and instead of music being a one-way thing, so him listening to my music taste, he started coming back like a little partnership and saying, Dad, have you heard this or have you heard that? Did you start passing music back to your parents at any stage?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Florence and the Machine was a big one. I remember begging my mum to take me to a Florence and the Machine concert and then going and her being like, wow, this actually is unbelievable. And I was like, I know it is. And there was a lot of like, when I hit kind of like 16, 17, I got super into the Yeah, Yeah, Yeahs because my mum really liked them. And then I was talking to her about like Metric and Angel Olsen and these other kind of female rock singers. And my mum loves Blondie as well.
And did you infect your dad with any of your tastes, or was it really just you and your mum connecting?
I think so, but my dad, it's kind of less of a conversation and more of us just sending each other things. We have a shared streaming account, and so he listens to my playlists and I listen to his, and that's kind of how we do it.
Brilliant. It's similar to what Ollie and I are doing now. He actually hosts his own episode now of the Friday Vinyl Club podcast,
Oh my
and
God.
yeah, he basically sends me 5 new to me songs for me to listen to. I have a week to listen to them, and I've got to then decide that if we were going to press one of the songs to an imaginary 7-inch vinyl for the den that we have, which one would it be? So yeah, I can really resonate with what you're doing with your dad there.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like your parents really do impact your music taste so much. I mean, this is super random, but there's that whole thing about this is so random about during pregnancy, if you play specific types of music to your baby, then they're more likely to be musical and like those genres when they are born, which I think is genuinely crazy. But it's true. It's like a genuinely proven thing. So your parents like really do have an impact. And my parents were such music lovers and they loved gigs. Like my mum, I don't know how she did it. She just managed to go to every great gig. She did a Michael Jackson, she went to David Bowie, she went to Prince. It's crazy. She just loved it. And so I think it's quite a full circle moment because none of my family actually play instruments. None of them are musicians at all. That I'm a musician because it's kind of like, you know, even though they're not necessarily like actively musical in what they play or what they do, they're such music lovers. It's kind of, I feel like I'm giving back now.
Yeah, and they must be so proud of you, Iona, honestly. You mentioned that you got your mum to see Florence and the Machine. Was that one of the first gigs you went to? Can you remember any of your early gig moments?
That was a later one because we went to Hyde Park, but the first one I went to, there's kind of like 2 really early ones. The first gig I ever went to, which I was talking to my parents about recently actually, was the White Stripes at the Hammersmith Apollo, which is so close to me. And used to be much easier to get tickets to when there were shows there. But yeah, we saw the White Stripes. I also saw Jack White solo play there, which was amazing. And actually, in the same venue, I saw Adele when she was
No way.
really, really young. Yeah, it was a tiny gig. She was so young. She was so nervous. I don't know like where the press has gone about this, but there used to be this whole thing about her having really bad stage fright. And she went on a huge live break really early on in her career. And we saw her right before she went on that huge break. And it was pretty amazing because she was so young. I think she was like, I mean, what was her first album? Was it called 19?
I think so, yeah.
It was like either during that album or just before. It was really early. It was crazy. But yeah, White Stripes was definitely the first one.
Are there any of those early music moments that made you feel this is something that I want to do? Do you have any specific memories of that sort of seed being planted, or was it always in you?
I think it's just a feeling, innit? It's just like, I just remember from a really young age, like going to gigs and nothing making me feel better. The way that people feel when they listen to music and when they feel like the pulse of music is so physically and mentally transformative that it just makes you want to believe in anything. And I so get that. I just think there's no night out and there's no anything that makes me feel the same way a gig does. It's just like complete happiness, to be honest. And that's always been there.
Do you get that same feeling when you were first on stage and you were playing maybe your original songs, do you come off in the same sort of buzz and high that you might do at a really great gig?
Yeah, I do. It feels different though because well, I'm kind of over the stage fright thing now because I've done it enough, but I think, the first few times you do it, it's so terrifying. And there's still something really terrifying if you forget to lose yourself in it because you're concentrating too hard. I mean, I don't find the performance itself scary. What I find scary is how unbelievably personal my lyrics are. And
Yes, very.
so I get really worried that that someone's listening too closely in the audience and is going to be like, "Oh my God, is she okay?" But I think, almost trying to shake off some of the responsibility that you feel when you get on stage is kind of the most important thing so that you can, retain that feeling. So yeah, it feels amazing, but it's kind of in a different way. And you have to make yourself kind of lose it a bit, I think.
Back to your lyrics in a short while, because they are absolutely stunning. So I can understand why putting yourself out there in that way might make you feel a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the Lana Del Rey moment. Let's talk a little bit about that. Talk us through what actually happened, because I've read around it, but I just want your perspective on it, because it seems like just an incredible point in your musical story.
Yeah, I mean, she was, I would say, for a good number of years, she was my absolute favorite. When I was probably from like 13, 14, 15, 16, I think she just ruled my life. Um, and well, one of the first ways I got into singing was by joining a professional children's choir called Capital Children's Choir in London. And basically, whenever kind of movie soundtracks or artists needed, for some reason, a children's choir, that's what we would do. So we did stuff for TV shows, we did soundtracks for movies, and we did backing singing on records and live. And when COVID hit, the director, Rachel, kind of thought that it would be a fun thing to do to kind of do these online covers just to keep everyone entertained, really, and to kind of keep the choir on the map. And to get a solo in them, you have to kind of audition. And I auditioned to do a solo in Bel Air by Lana Del Rey because I was like, that's mine because I love her. And I did it. And the most hilarious thing is that I got the solo and I was so excited. And then the day I had to do it, I was in a really bad mood. And it haunts me to this day because in that video, I look so grumpy. I was like, I don't want to do it. Don't film me. I can't be asked. My mom was like, Iona, literally stop being so grumpy. This is ridiculous. But I did it. And then someone sent it to Lana Del Rey. And I didn't have TikTok at the time because I was in a phase where I kind of thought that it was this like satanic thing that was brainwashing people, and kind of still do. And I had to download it specifically because someone was like, you need to watch this. And then suddenly I started getting messages and messages from people being like, Iron, have you seen? Have you seen? And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I downloaded it and it was right at the beginning of TikTok. And Lana Del Rey made an account and had posted one video. So obviously all the mega fans had immediately found it. And it was the choir singing Bel Air. And I was like, whatever, this is the choir. Like they've cut out my part. And then literally like 3 seconds in, it goes into my solo and that's what she sings along to. And I just remember weeping for
My
an
God.
unbelievable amount of time. And it honestly kept me going for months in COVID because I was so bored and sad and like just doing my schoolwork and not seeing anyone. And she was my idol at the time. So it was just like completely weird. Completely weird.
Completely amazing at the same time.
Yeah, completely amazing and
Oh my
completely
days.
weird.
I'm so glad that you talked me through that because reading about it online just doesn't do that moment justice. I can't imagine stepping in your shoes and feeling that. Thinking about your writing then, did Lana sort of influence that? Because you have such a really beautiful, unique, deeply poetic texture to it. When you were kind of from that point mapping things out and trying to build your artistic identity, was she a big inspiration or did you have others that were inspiring you from a writing perspective?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, her kind of layers of metaphor I've always really, really loved, because I've never connected so much with music lyrically that's super straightforward. I think this is also to do with my love of fiction and my love of books and poetry, is that I'm in it for the interesting words. I'm in it for the story. I don't need it to be literal. I don't need everything to be spelled out for me. I want to kind of figure it out myself. That's what I love so much about words, is that you can kind of do what you want. And I think in terms of someone that is really popular and has so successfully managed to balance making pop music that is unbelievably successful and treat words with such freedom and reverence, I just think is really admirable and impressive. And that's why I like Patti Smith and PJ Harvey and Beth Gibbons and Stevie Nicks, because I think they managed to capture the same kind of, possibility for truth and whimsy to exist simultaneously, which I think is really nice.
And all strong, independent female artists as well, doing things their own way. Yeah.
Exactly.
As a lyricist, where do you go mentally to find your stories? Do you kind of have to wait for inspiration?
I think mine are more like, it's like a frame of mind that I kind of become aware that I'm entering into, which usually happens when I'm really tired or really sad, or have just finished a book, or have just gone to a show, or have seen something interesting. So there's like two different zones that I exist in. And kind of when I feel it coming on, then it becomes important to make sure that I give myself enough time alone. It's quite like a solitary experience for me personally. I love writing with other people, but this sounds really narcissistic, but I do actually think when I have my best ideas and when I feel my creative flow works the most successfully is when I'm alone for long periods of time. Yeah, but it comes on super randomly, to be honest.
Do you know when you've written something, and especially some of the deeply personal stuff that you seem to write, do you know straight away when something feels special? Can you sense it? I think about a track like Existential, for example. It feels pretty raw.
Yeah, that was really raw, actually. And I wrote that with George Glue, who's the producer that I did it with. That was actually an in-studio song. So some of mine I'm writing in a couple hours in a studio, and some of them I'm writing on my own and then I bring in. And that was an in-studio song. And I just remember rocking up and being like, I'm in a great mood today. Like this is gonna be good. And that's also a testament to like having chemistry with who you're writing with and getting along and trusting each other to talk about stuff, which can always be quite scary. But yeah, Existential, I went in, I was like, I want to write something fun.
The landscape for independent singer-songwriters is changing pretty fast. Streaming algorithms, social media pressure, even AI now coming onto the scene. How do you protect your creative process to try and keep you sounding uniquely yourself?
I think like self-trust is a big thing, but also having people around you that are willing and able to be really honest with you. I've got some incredibly judgmental friends who I value unbelievably much. And people that know my sound. Like I was lucky enough to really get to grips with what I wanted to do again during COVID, just because I had the time. I wrote so much, and then eventually you get all the trash songs out of you, and a kind of a flow starts, and your writing starts to come to form, really. And I think because I had the time to do that, that was really helpful, and it made it much easier for me as I got older to like stick to what I felt was true. And the whole thing, I mean, even though obviously you have to do the whole social media thing, whatever, I thought that was going to make me feel really influenced by everything and find my voice much more confusing and hard to find. But actually, it's been an unbelievably good lesson in not really giving a fuck about like what people think about you, because you post a reel and that is objectively quite embarrassing. But then it's like, well, this is my job and this is my music and I like my music and I've got things I want to say. So that's really it. And anyone that doesn't like it, it's just kind of not my problem.
Good for you. But talking of putting things out there, what is more satisfying to you, Iona? Is it seeing the counts of streams when you see how many people are listening to your songs, or is it that moment where somebody's playing you on the radio and it, you catch it in the air and you're like, oh my God, I'm on the radio? Which is it, or do they both balance out?
It's kind of like weirdly neither of those things. It's more like if I get a DM and someone's like, this is how this song's related to my life at this exact moment when I've listened to it, and thanks for writing it, kind of thing. Like when I hear actual personal stories of how I've affected people, that is just for me like a real marker that I've done something correctly, if that makes sense. Because streams I actually find really hard to get my head around. Like Back to Ground just got over 1 million, and I was like, I know that this is amazing, but like I look at that number and I just don't even know what that means, because it's like that's just a number. I don't know what those people look like. I don't know when they're listening to this song. I don't know what they think about it and all that. It's like kind of a weird numeral. Is that a word? I think I'm just making up words.
I think you're making
Like a
things up as we go along here, but that's
it's just
fine.
like
We'll go with that.
it's a weird experience, I think. So when people actually like DM me and tell me what they think, that's kind of when I feel the most gratified, I think.
And I think it will serve you well. It'll keep you grounded.
Mm.
So you brought in Horses by Patti Smith from 1975 to Friday Vinyl Club. Where did Patti Smith first come onto your radar? Now, I know a lot of people listening might not know that you balanced your music career with an English literature degree in Cambridge, and you did an entire university dissertation on Patti Smith.
I did.
What was the starting point there for you?
I think well, the starting point was that I always knew I wanted to dedicate some of my degree to music because I love it, obviously. And it's kind of a personal philosophy of mine that I really do think that like songwriting deserves a real place in the historical literary canon. I think that it deserves to be there, and it's something that is maybe overlooked. And I have also long held the thought that Patti Smith is, I think, a lot more impactful to kind of music and its formation and the genre of punk rock as a whole than she's given credit for. And I remember one of my parents, I can't remember which one it was, sending me Land. And I was like, the first time I listened to it, I was like, what is this? This is so weird. I don't know if you've listened to it, but it's an odd one.
Yeah, I've listened to since you suggested it, I've had it on in my ears on my evening walks.
Right.
I have to say, I knew a couple of songs. So I saw Patti Smith support Nick Cave a few years ago down in London, All Points East. So I remembered a couple of tracks from there, but it's not an album that's made its way yet into our vinyl den. But I was blown away by it. I mean, the way that she articulates herself on that album and on these songs, it was revolutionary at the time, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And it's just vast. Like the way that the album is constructed is just so weird and wonderful and hadn't been done before. And yeah, I listened to Land. It's just this like violent poem. And I just remember thinking this is like one of the weirdest, most amazing things I've ever heard. And I hadn't encountered it before. And obviously with my interests being, what they are in music and literature, I was like, this has got to be it. And I knew from my first year that that was what I was going to write my dissertation on. I had literally no idea what about Patti Smith specifically I was going to write about, but I was like, I don't care what it is, I'm doing it. And I felt so grateful to actually, have that opportunity to just dive into something really specific. And obviously, I couldn't make it too musical, otherwise I would have not graduated probably. But yeah, I mean, just from listening to that first song, it captured me completely, really.
And that's like a nearly 10-minute long song, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I remember I was thinking about that. There was a lot of themes that came across in there. It just felt like it was more of a theatrical performance rather than anything else. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I think that's kind of what it is. Like, it is cinema, it is a story, which is something I really appreciate in music. And I think in some of my songs, that kind of inspiration comes across. But I mean, my dissertation was about the fact that, especially in women's literature and in women's poetry, everyone's always asking, what in your life is this based on? We want to know. And I think, why can't it just be a story? Why can't this like amazing fictional thing just exist as a piece of literature? And I think that's what Land does. And obviously, things are always influenced by your life. But yeah, I mean, just, Land is a completely weird centerpiece of the album, and is kind of poetic, and it's a story. And then you've got more poppy songs like Kimberly and like Gloria, and then you've got Redondo Beach, which it's got reggae in it, and then um which one is the one that's really jazzy? One of them is a really jazzy song. And it's just totally bizarre, but makes perfect sense. And I just think, like, especially now in an age where you really have to carve out your identity by being consistent, this just proves that you actually don't really need to, you don't really need to do that. And I just really, yeah, I think it's amazing.
So you heard Land first, then do you remember the first time you actually heard the album as a whole? When and was it an instant connection leading on from Land, or did it take a little bit of time for the layers to peel back?
I think it took a little bit of time. I remember hearing Redondo Beach in a bar and being like, "This is Patti Smith. Love this song. What is this?" And Shazamming it, and it was Redondo Beach. Then as soon as I realized that was on the same album, I was like, "Right, it's time." I have this habit where sometimes if I need like a long walk, I'll just put an album on that I haven't listened to. I tried to make my way through the Rolling Stone Top 500, but that was just a lot of hours of listening to music. So now I just do like a long walk, and then however long the album is, that's how long I walk for. And so I think this was one of those for me.
And as a songwriter and a lyricist now, when you hear this in 2026, and it's still such a powerful piece of art statement, really. What do you think makes it such a benchmark record?
I think, a lot's changed since 1975. I mean, the speed at which the world changes now, you could argue, is even faster than it ever has been before. And I mean, my college in Cambridge didn't let women in until 1988. Um,
Really?
yeah. And
1988?
1988.
I thought you were going to say like 1940s or something like
No,
that. My
no.
word.
I know. I mean, lobotomies were still happening until the late 20th century. The world has changed so much so quickly. And I mean, the last 100 years have just been ridiculous, really. I mean, like, way to make it like a casual statement, but it's true. And I think Patti Smith as a figure is really underestimated. I mean, that iconic artwork, the cover that was taken by Robert Mapplethorpe, when he took that portrait, I mean, totally changed like what female musicians had to look like. They did that together. She curated this completely iconic appearance, the white shirt and the suit jacket. She in being captured on an album cover in such an androgynous way, kind of cemented herself as this kind of anti-establishment, defiant character that blurred gender norms and kind of was really willing to go against the grain, but not in a way that kind of was in spite of everyone that came before her. I mean, loads of the songs are dedicated to other people, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. Um, and in doing so, she had a massive hand in kickstarting the beginning of punk rock. I can't remember what gig it was. It might have been a gig at CBGB, but there were a few reviews of a gig there in the 70s. And some critics would argue that that was actually one of the formative gigs of the beginning of punk rock. And I just think that that's really important still in the way that people, learn to protest society through art. I think it's just has a huge impact on everything, really. I could go on about this for an unbelievably long time. Sorry.
No, I love your passion. I really do. I mean, you mentioned the album cover there. It's a stark black and white image of Patti there, isn't it? There's no manufactured big rock star statement. There's no over glamorized pose. It's just a declaration of identity, isn't it? Somebody standing there completely bare, and that really matches the music, I think. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think, you know, that kind of also is reflective of her kind of being half rock and roller, half poet, is that, you know, poetry, people often, you know, anticipate it being this unbelievably raw, truthful thing. And I think that it definitely is. But, you know, there's also something in simplicity that's like freeing for an audience. It's saying, you know, take this and it's not over explained and do what you want with it. I think it's kind of like a twofold thing of honesty and an ability to reinterpret that's really important.
Yeah, for me, it felt like she was basically saying, don't expect compromise. Just come and step into the atmosphere type thing. There was no pretentiousness around it. And then when you do start listening to the tracks, you kind of get a sense of what she was trying to portray. Let's go into a few tracks themselves, because there's some monumental pieces in there. The one that I knew straight off the bat when I saw her live at that Nick Cave gig, and I really enjoyed listening to the album version, was Gloria, the opening track. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, Gloria, I first came to through her poem Oath, which was one of her first poems, mixed with Van Morrison's song Gloria. And again, this is all kind of a declaration of independence that she kind of engages in, of mixing her poem with inherently masculine rock and roll music, which is just something that wasn't done before. Also, I have this whole, you know, God thing with Gloria. I just think it's super interesting because she had a confusing background story of kind of where religion existed in her life. And she kind of, in Gloria, she talks about God and she argues for her own, you know, responsibility and agency over her own actions. What's the line? Jesus died for somebody's sins, but not mine. She's like, you know, believe in what you want to believe in. Sure, Jesus can do what he wants, and I completely understand that he might provide some kind of salvation for you, but I, you know, do that for myself, which is so punk rock. It's so punk rock. Um, it's it's just like, you know, that line as an opening statement says, okay, let's think about individuality, and it invites the audience to kind of engage in this kind of collective introspection that is kind of amazing, I think.
And it's an incredible opening track to the album,
Mm.
but I'm not sure I'm not sure after I've heard it whole that it sets the scene for the album, because it has so much of a musical journey there. When I was listening to that opening track, I was like thinking, all right, well, maybe this is the sort of landscape that the music's going to sit in. But actually, it's just so all over the place, isn't it? You can't pigeonhole it just by listening to that one track, which I thought was really interesting. Even
Yeah.
now, after listening to it for a week or so, I'm still not sure what to make of it. I'll be honest with you, Iona.
I think this is what I find so incredible about it, because I mean, again, I could talk about this for forever, but I think in comparison to music now, where you have to, I mean, music now is so narcissistic, and I'm completely self-aware about it, and I have to look at myself through a camera lens far too often, and so does everyone, because that's how, you know, the industry functions. You need people to love you in order to love your music. And I think the reason that this album is so higgledy-piggledy, for lack of a better description, is because Smith doesn't feel the need to tether herself to one narrative. You know, this is all linking into her kind of androgyny and her negotiation of different philosophical lines. Sometimes she doesn't land on really any conclusion. In one of the songs, she swaps from male perspective to female perspective, and then kind of an objective overseer, and mixes between using, you know, she, he, I. And it's so interesting because I think that is exactly what it is. You know, it's this like gender bending narrative movement where she presents the listener with so much interesting content and kind of refuses to sort it out for them, you know, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's not an album that I would consider that I would go back to for comfort. It feels like an album that I would go back to be challenged and to listen to it and be taken on a bit of a musical journey.
Yeah.
And one of the tracks that seem to be, I'm quite at odds with this one because it seems to be quite a famous track called Birdland. I'd read about Birdland when I was doing a bit of research to chat with you, and people were saying how iconic that was. But actually, when I listened to it, I don't know what I was expecting. But as a lyricist and a songwriter, how do you look at that? Because that's sort of like not a natural song structure, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely avant-garde. I think I would look at it completely differently from kind of like a songwriting perspective versus like a poetry perspective, again, which is a bit silly because I just said that in my head they're kind of merged, which they still are. Um, but I think it is a weird song. I mean, you're completely right. But I mean, Birdland is just another example of her kind of showing reverence for someone. It was inspired by Peter Reich. He did a biographical novel called A Book of Dreams about like weird stuff like UFOs and spirits, and it's just super odd. But I think this is an example of just someone taking complete freedom and kind of just going for it, which I really respect. I do think this is not my favorite song on the album because I'm only human, but like intellectually it's super interesting. And I know what you mean. It is a weird one.
And I don't have a problem with long tracks. Justin Curry from Amitri in his solo work, he's got an incredible song that helped me through a really tough time called The Fight to Be Human. I mean, that's about 8 minutes long, but I wouldn't expect Justin to put like 3 or 4 tracks of 8, 9, 10 minutes on the same album. It's like an outlier when you listen to something like that. But Patti's got some quite long tracks on here, hasn't she?
I think what I would call Birdland as an example of is like, you know, when you go to a jazz club and it's 5 people just kind of improving for ages. I find Birdland to be a kind of lyrical equivalent of that because, I mean, it has, you know, jazzy musical influence in it. And I think she was kind of taking that and making it into kind of like strange literary jazz is kind of how I see it, if that makes any sense. But I do agree. I think 9 minutes is a bit outrageous.
I take it you've got no plans to release any big, long songs. Long songs.
Not as of yet. Not as of I love a 4-minute, but that's about as long as anyone can really handle.
Yeah. Are there any other tracks on here that you've gravitated towards? You said that Birdland wasn't necessarily your favourite. What would be your favourite on here?
I mean, Land, which we talked about, is definitely
Yeah.
my favorite. But I think in terms of like modern impact, Free Money is relevant still because I just think that that's so lyrically poignant even today in kind of, you know, politics and everything that's going on. And this idea of like anti-capitalism, which is incredibly popular. I mean, unpopular and popular at the moment. I just think that to have done something so apt for kind of, I mean, really every period of humanity is just really impressive. And, you know, comes back to the idea that songwriting and poetry is something that's, you know, lived. It's experiential stuff.
Yeah, I found that Free Money to be one of the more accessible songs.
Yeah.
Even though it had heavy themes. Yeah, I got that escaping poverty, and there was hope in there as well, which sort of resonated. This album's traveled with you through a lot of your life then. Have any tracks shifted in meaning for you as you've listened to them over the years?
I think I haven't written anything like it, but I found Kimberly really interesting because it's dedicated to her younger sister. And like, I always find it really tricky in terms of writing my own songs when I'm obviously writing about someone I know. And this idea of like dedication and dedicating songs to people. I really didn't like Kimberly at the start because I just don't really like songs that are like super overtly dedicated to people. It's just not really my thing. But I was listening to it again recently because I have a song called Rosaline. It's not out, and my best friend is called Ro, and she thinks it's about her, and it's not. But
Okay.
I was thinking about it recently, actually, because we were going to talk about it this week. I was thinking about Kimberly, and I was thinking maybe that I'm wrong. Basically, I was thinking maybe that I'm wrong, and that there actually is a way to dedicate things to people, and they don't have to be, you know, entirely based on fact. They can just be, you know, pretty and nice, and it's nice to, you know, gift people things like a song, which is such a permanent thing to give to someone that you really appreciate. Anyway, that's what I was thinking about this week. I'm still not sure that I land on either side of dedicated songs.
I think it must be tricky though, because as a songwriter, you're picking up influences and stories from everything around you. I know I've heard some of the artists that I really love talking about how they blur fact and fiction, and when you listen to a song, it's opening a bit of a doorway. But that's all it is. You know, don't take it as read, don't take it as fact, which must be difficult. So yeah, how do you combat that? Or by the sound of it, maybe you don't yet.
Maybe I don't yet. Exactly. No, I definitely do. I think I just, I think when something like that happens and it's a bit too obvious who I've written a song about, I do kind of take a step back, and think about, always the route less traveled, really. Because I think if the emotion's still true, you don't need to tell people exactly what the situation is or, name names. But again, that's just my style. I mean, everyone has a different perspective on it. Obviously, Lily Allen's new album was like a prime example of using incredibly specific details about an incredibly specific person. And to an extent, I respect it. It's just it's not my thing.
Well, Lily Allen did that, and I think doesn't Taylor Swift basically do that on every song?
Yeah, exactly. I know.
I'm sure you'll find your own route from that perspective, but at the same time, whether something is written specifically for somebody or not, I think it must be a really nice feeling for somebody to say to you, "You wrote that about me, didn't you?" Because that means they've connected with that on some level.
Yeah. I honestly don't think anyone's ever even done that. And if they did, I think I'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Um, I was talking to a friend recently and they were like, "I don't think it would be that nice for you to write a song about me because they're all unbelievably depressing." And I was like, "That's actually so true. It's not a compliment if I'm writing about someone." Which maybe I should change. I have a goal for this year, which is to write, a happy song. I've definitely got some that sound happy and are very
Don't do it. Don't do
dance,
it.
nothing happy.
Yeah. No,
Don't
don't
do
do
it.
it. Don't do
Give
it.
up.
I remember I remember in 2001 when Ollie was born, one of my heroes, Neil Finn from a band called Crowded House, he did a solo album, and on one of the tracks, he said it was the happiest song he's ever written. It's called "Don't Ask Why." He played it once at a gig, and he never played it again. I don't think anybody actually connected with it, but that's just that's my experience. And we'll go on to your solo music in a second, but depressing is not an adjective that I would use with your music. Just thinking about Patti Smith, if you were introducing Patti to somebody who was a complete blank slate, who'd never heard any of her music before, is Horses the definitive starting point, given how challenging it is? Or is there somewhere else in her back catalogue that you might point to first?
I'd probably start with like Dancing Barefoot, which was on Wave 1979, which is about her husband, Fred Smith. I think it's an unbelievably good song. I mean, arguably the most successful. Well, it's not an arguable, actually, it is the most successful is Because the Night, which was on Easter, and she co-wrote that with Bruce Springsteen, which is unbelievably cool, and definitely her most commercial song, but I don't know that I would say that that's actually that representative of the rest of the work. I'd say Dancing Barefoot, which is so emotionally true and so emotionally honest about how much she loved her husband, and, People Have the Power, which is her most political song.
When you hold the vinyl of Patti Smith, do you start to envisage what your first vinyl cover is going to look like? Have you even started to think about that yet?
I have started to think about that. Yeah, I have thought about it quite a lot. It's really difficult because my brain works so much in, words, so sometimes with photography and stuff, it takes a minute for me to catch up. But yeah, I do. I mean, originally, I didn't want to have myself on it. I was like, I just want it to be like a drawing or something. And my team were like, "That's really weird. Like, why would you do that? Obviously, it's got to have your face on it." But I think it's like it's a funny thing. I feel so represented in my music and my lyrics that photos of myself always just feel quite weird, if that makes sense. They feel like less honest maybe than what's going on in the music. Every single question you ask, I just present you with like some different philosophical issue that I have with what I'm talking about. Um, but yeah, I've thought about it a lot. I find photos of myself difficult because these days I have to look at so many of them that I'm kind of like not even sure what I look like anymore. But I work with some amazing photographers, and I trust them very much. So I would trust other people's opinions on that probably more than my own because I just get funny about it, obviously, as I'm demonstrating right now.
Yeah, I think you'll find your own way. It's interesting. An artist that Ollie introduced me to back in about 3, 4 years ago was Olivia Dean,
Mm,
and her album Messy. She did
mhm,
a big photo shoot for that album,
mm.
and actually, none of the pictures that were the professional ones she connected with and resonated with, and she just went back to the one that's on the cover now, and she really pushed for that to go on there. And it's not a perfect, not a perfect picture at all, but she felt it was representative of the album. So yeah, I'm sure you'll find your own
Interesting, I
way.
didn't know that.
I'm sure the second one was probably a little bit more styled, but certainly for Messi, that's the route she took.
Yeah, interesting.
Now, Iona, we always end the podcast with a segment called Friday Spin, where normally I would ask you to recommend something to pass on to our listeners, something old, new, or rediscovered. But I want to just totally hijack this section and talk completely about your amazing solo work. You've been dropping some incredible solo tracks, and of course, your EP From Dust is out today. So, how does it feel? Try and sum up. What does it feel now to have a body of work out there and have this EP out in the digital world?
It feels quite confirming, I would say, because I think for a while I was really struggling with. I mean, my songwriting style and like me when I'm just writing with my guitar, like my sound is pretty fixed. But I think when you get in with a producer, it's really hard to figure out what you want. Um, and also to find the confidence to like speak up and tell them what you want it to sound like. And I think this EP for me is a real declaration of sound, and I feel really confident about the fact that it is representative of what my music sounds like to me in my head when I'm writing it. And that's like really important. And I think early in my career, exactly that word, it just feels really confirming.
Mm. If you had to suggest the perfect gateway song into your writing and the songs online, which one would you choose as to which is more representative of you as an artist?
I think probably Can We Still Hang Out? Because it exists somewhere between like the quieter, more singer-songwritery stuff and the kind of more rocky, upbeat stuff. I think that's probably the one.
And it's a brilliant track. You've been getting so much well-deserved praise for that
Thank
lately.
you.
The storytelling on that track is so incredibly vivid and really painfully relatable as well. I think it's an absolutely stunning track.
Thank you.
I mean, you have got a number of tracks out there, so I don't want to just limit this chat to the EP. Although obviously, Existential, Crashing, Bones, and Dawn, which I absolutely love. By the way, we'll come back to that in a second. I just want to talk about a couple of tracks that I'm personally in love with, and the first one that I gravitated towards was Back to Ground. And I'm really interested to understand and hear the story about this because you actually gave two completely different versions of that song. There's the
Mhm.
big driving rocky version, and then there's this beautiful slowed down cinematic version that reminds me of an artist that Ollie got me into, London Grammar. There's
Yeah.
vibes of that band on there. They both carry very different emotional weights, but obviously same lyrics. What's the backstory there, and what was your thought process to record it in two different ways?
I mean, kind of exactly what you said, really. I just felt like I was thinking about the meaning of the song, and I felt like I'd abandoned my fans a bit, and I was in a bit of a. There were a couple months when I didn't have anything coming out, and I was going back and listening to my music, and I thought that Back to Ground and the meaning behind it kind of just deserved another go, just to see what other meaning I could get out of the song. And as soon as we got in to do the second version, we like immediately clicked on what we wanted it to sound like. It was really weird. It was like just a moment of complete wavelength.
Hmm.
And I mean, the song originally was about like me being at uni and feeling unbelievably stressed that I was like getting too old and I was missing my chance to do music and that I needed to just like stop worrying about everything and realize that like I'm going to die soon anyway. So I just got to do it. Um, and that was literally what it was about. I was like, I'm going to die anyway. So I might as well just, go hard or go home.
Yeah.
And that was the original version. And then I was like, this now feels slightly different now that I have music coming out and now that I'm actually doing this job. And so I just thought it deserved a re-record because I was in a slightly different space when I did the second version. And the first version obviously is a lot more popular. But yeah, that's kind of where that came from.
I enjoy them both. I genuinely do. But the cinematic, slowed down version is the one that I usually gravitate towards.
Yeah.
And I think it shows, just in those two songs, it shows the versatility that you have. And I find that really fascinating that you can pull off massive cinematic landscape like that second version of Back to Ground. But you've also got other tracks there that are slightly different. So Voices on the TV and 17, where the production is a bit more haunting. Do you feel like you've nailed it now, the direction that you're wanting to head in?
I mean, even the songs on the EP, like there's a huge range of sound on there. And I think that is kind of the case with a lot of my music. I mean, 17, Cowboy Boots and Violence are all quite old now. So I'd say those are probably in a slightly different sound group as the rest of the tracks. But I think, my lyrics and the songwriting and my voice are pretty consistent. And so I just don't want to have to limit myself into like one sound. And I know that that's very ill advised in this industry. Um, but I think, I listen to a lot of rock music and I also listen to a lot of singer-songwritery music and I also listen to a lot of more atmospheric music like London Grammar and like Portishead and like Lana Del Rey. And I think there's room for my music to meander between those three different vibes. And I think those actually are exactly the three different energies that the EP kind of, balances.
Mm. 17 feels like an incredibly personal track.
Yeah.
Time moving too fast and holding on to a heavy heart. That was the track that Melissa fell in love with,
Yeah.
as I mentioned. What When you were writing that, did you know that by digging so deep, you were producing such an incredible track, and I guess at a relatively young age?
I mean, no, to be honest. I wrote that song when we were just coming out of COVID. And I went into COVID 16 and I left basically 20. Um, so that was pretty crazy. And I developed really bad anxiety at the end because I was so stressed about going to university and, starting a music career. And again, this thing of just always feeling like I'm so old and I've missed the boat, which is obviously ridiculous. And I started just like feeling this overwhelming like life anxiety. And it just came out in this massive ballad, which is what 17 is. And I love a massive ballad. But I had no idea that so many people would connect to it, to be honest. Because I was like, it feels a bit ridiculous to be like, still feel 17. It's like, well, just grow up then. Um, but yeah, no, I had no idea, to be honest, that so many people would connect to it. And I'm really glad that they did. But yeah, it's a super raw song.
Do you think, that bit you just said about, oh, just grow up, do you think that would ever stop you writing sort of personal and vulnerable lyrics? Or are you past that now? Are you kind of like, I will write what I want, what feels right, and I'll put out what I want without any pressure?
Yeah, do you know what? I think that is where I'm at because obviously, you can be self-aware as much as you want. And I think I am pretty self-aware about like my music, but I think the whole point of I'm not trying to seem perfect in my music. It's like a lot easier to do that in conversation. But in my music, even if it's a bit embarrassing sometimes, I mean, the whole of Can We Still Hang Out is literally just about being a massive beg. So I think, honesty is really important in music. That's like why people connect to it in the first place.
Let's just touch on your new EP then. Today, the tracks Crashing, Bones, and Dawn have been released. What's the story behind Dawn? Because that's the one that I immediately gravitated towards from the three that came out. That does feel like it's taken a darker turn from your songwriting and the way you put your song out there. What was the backstory on that one?
So Dawn was actually the hardest one to get on the EP, because even though I'm an independent artist, I'm still getting opinions from people, and Dawn is not a commercial song at all. And it's the most poetic of all of my songs. And it came from someone I really care about dying a few years ago, and just how strange grief feels, and just the way that, I don't know, that grief just feels like this huge societal thing that people don't really talk about, and it really fucks people up. Um, and it can be such a huge, vast thing, just this massive shroudy blanket that just covers everything, really. And that's what the song is about, and how people kind of try and comfort you, and sometimes it's impossible, and it feels impossible for anyone to relate to your problems, which is obviously not true. And that's what it's about. I mean, cursed in your comfort, it would never survive, is one of the lines that I repeat, and it's just like when someone's comfort starts to feel kind of like this rotten thing because it's not, hitting where it's supposed to hit, and how terrifying that is when you know that you need it. And that's what it's about. But it's definitely one of the more like lyrically ambiguous songs.
It definitely is one that, certainly from my musical taste, gravitated towards straight away. The other one that I gravitated towards, I mean, all three are fantastic, was Bones. What was the background to that song?
Bones? Well, the first verse, "This town, it gets me so weary," was about Cambridge. Because I was there and I was just feeling utterly miserable. And Bones is about like this weird feeling where you like feel so reliant on a specific person or specific people. And you're like, if I could, I would live inside of your bones and I would feel so happy doing it, even if I was completely suffocated and like dying in them, basically. Which is really horrible. But that's what the song is about. It's just like this weird physical, like really bodily feeling of like, being reliant on the wrong people. I mean, the bridge is probably the most like explanatory part. When missing you becomes a comfort, because I know the deepness of the feeling hurts. There's something just like family in the way it burns. In pain, I'm home. It's like you become so used to this feeling of like suffering that's like more familiar and easier to handle than anything else.
Do you know, it's funny, Iona, when you read those lyrics out, they wouldn't feel out of place on one of Patti Smith's albums.
Oh, really?
Do you know what I mean? They're absolutely incredible. And let's touch on Crashing then. That's the other one there, because we've talked about the other two. What's the background to Crashing?
Crashing's about, I think this is not just a feminine thing, because I think men really experience it too, but it's just like, as a woman, and especially doing the job that I do, like the way that you look and your kind of relationship with your body is such a weird thing. And it's about feeling like really separate to your body and how strange that is. I think like a lot of people feel that. It's like, as a woman, you get objectified a lot, as you do as a man. Illness makes you feel unbelievably separated from your body. I had a bit of a spell of anxiety where like bits of my hair fell out, and I was like, this is so unbelievably weird. And that's what that weird lyric is about. And I can't be alone here. My hair's just grown back. I'm holding so much hurting in my hands. And I think it's a really universal experience, but that's what Crashing is about.
That's fascinating to have that background to that. Hearing the EP as a whole now, it feels like this is a massive launching pad for you. Looking ahead to the rest of 2026, will there be a full album? Will there be a vinyl release and live dates? What's coming up for you?
There will be a vinyl release, which is so exciting. And we're going to do a big launch gig in London. And then I think we're going to do a couple more gigs in London this winter, specifically of the EP. And I think that's going to be really great. And then more singles coming, and then new project next year, which is going to be unbelievably exciting. But yeah,
Fantastic.
lots of gigs from September onwards.
Well, I look forward to the vinyl release and obtaining a copy and putting it in our vinyl den. I can't wait for that.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you tour outside London, come up to Leeds, and we'll make sure we get down there to support you. Iona, thank you so much for bringing your story, horses, and your own beautiful songs to Friday Vinyl Club. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you so much for having me, honestly.
It's always amazing to hear how music flows through our lives, especially from someone who is both a music lover and a beautiful music maker. Thank you, Iona, for all the music you've given us so far. Can't wait to catch a gig of yours at some point soon. If you want to get in touch with the podcast, you can contact directly on Instagram at JamieB1973 or drop us a line on email, thefridayvinylclub@hotmail.com. We'll put some of Iona's tracks as well as some of Patti Smith's horses into our Friday Vinyl Club Spotify playlist, and we'll put that in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave us a rating wherever you get your podcasts. It really makes a difference for a small family independent podcast doing things without sponsors or ads. Until next time, keep your records spinning and your stories alive. Thank you, Iona. Thank you so much for your time. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Bye.